My name is Jenna Cole. I am 33 years old. And this morning I received a voicemail from a number I had blocked 11 years ago. I listened to it once standing in my kitchen with my coffee going cold in my hand. Then I sat down at the table and stared at my phone for 9 minutes without moving. Not because the voicemail surprised me. Because it did not surprise me at all. Some people spend years waiting for an apology. I had spent 11 years building a life so complete that I had stopped needing one. And then one Thursday morning, in a voice thinner and older than I remembered, my mother said my name into a voicemail and asked if we could talk. She did not say sorry. She said she had been thinking about things. I knew what things. Before I tell you what I decided, and I will tell you, every word of it, I need to take you back 21 years. To a Thursday afternoon in October. To a girl with $9 in her pocket standing alone in the middle of the largest train station she had ever seen. Watching her parents drive past the window. Watching her father smile. Watching her mother lean out and yell something that would become the sentence her entire life organized itself around. If you are watching this right now, drop your city in the comments. Just your city. I read every one. And if someone has ever turned your fear into entertainment, like this video. Now. Back to the beginning. I grew up in a town called Glendale, Illinois. My parents, Frank and Carol Cole, owned a small hardware distribution company that had been in our family since my grandfather built it with 11 employees and a lease on a warehouse outside town. By the time I was born, it employed 40 people and had its own parking lot. My father wore the same boots every day and drove the same truck for 12 years. My mother organized the church fundraiser and the neighborhood block party and any other event where being seen as a good person was its own reward. From the outside, we looked like the kind of family other families pointed to. Inside, love came with conditions. Safety depended on whether my mother was bored enough to invent another lesson. That was her favorite word. Lesson. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I asked for help, I was helpless. If I forgot something, I needed to learn responsibility. She could take any ordinary childhood mistake and reshape it into a reason to humiliate me. My father always laughed along because laughing along was easier than standing up. When I was 7, they left me in a shopping mall for 2 hours because I asked for a pair of shoes that cost $12 more than the ones they had already chosen for me. My father bet my mother a 20 that I would still be sitting in the same spot when they came back. He won. When I was 9, they drove away from my school's winter fair and left me in the parking lot for 40 minutes because I had cried after a classmate mocked my science project. My mother said tears attracted worse treatment, and I needed to learn that early. I learned something else entirely. I learned to study their moods before speaking. I learned to disappear inside my own house. I learned that if I stayed quiet enough and useful enough and invisible enough, I could sometimes move through an entire day without being chosen for one of their experiments. The only place I ever felt entirely safe was in my own head. I read obsessively. Library books returned and replaced so quickly. The librarian, a woman named Mrs. Garrett, started setting aside things she thought I would like before I arrived. She was the first adult outside my family who treated me like my preferences mattered. I thought about that for years afterward. The train station happened because of a geography project. I had received a B on a project I had spent 3 weeks preparing. My mother held the grade like evidence of moral failure. My father said maybe I was getting lazy. That night I heard them in the kitchen, voices low and amused in the specific way that always made my stomach tighten. My mother said I needed a lesson I would never forget. My father said he would bet money on that. The next morning they made breakfast. My mother asked if I wanted orange juice. My father said we were taking a day trip to Chicago, just the 3 of us. For one terrible, desperate moment I thought maybe they were trying to reset something. Maybe the grade fight was over. Maybe this was the closest thing my family could manage to a fresh start. I should have known better. The entire drive from Glendale to Chicago felt wrong. My father kept the radio loud. My mother kept turning around to ask questions she already knew I would answer carefully. Did I think smart girls were ready for the real world? Did I think life would care whether I was scared? Every answer amused them. By the time the skyline appeared, I had the familiar feeling in my body, something bad was coming and I would not be allowed to prepare for it. We parked near Union Station around noon. I had never seen anything that big or crowded. People moved in every direction. Businessmen. Tourists. Families. All of them moving like they belonged somewhere. I stayed close because I did not know where else to stand. Inside, my mother pointed to a pillar near the entrance and told me to wait while they moved the car and found lunch. 15 minutes, she said. Maybe 20. I asked if I could come. My father laughed so loudly that people turned to look. I stayed by the pillar. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then 45. I told myself the parking was difficult. I told myself the food line was long. I told myself there were 100 reasonable explanations and I just needed to wait. An hour in, my chest started hurting. An hour and a half in, my hands were shaking. I had $9 in my pocket. No phone, I was 12 and we did not have the kind of family where children carried phones. No address written down because it had never occurred to me that I would need one. No idea how the trains worked, which platforms went where, whether any of them could get a 12-year-old girl back to Glendale without help. I had never felt smaller in my life. I stayed by the pillar because my mother had told me to wait there, and even in the middle of what was happening I was still afraid of doing the wrong thing. That was how thoroughly they had trained me. Even being abandoned, I was following their instructions. 2 hours in the station got louder as afternoon crowds filled in. Every announcement over the speakers made my heart jump. Every dark-haired woman made me turn my head. Then I saw our car through the front windows, moving slowly past the street outside. I recognized the bumper sticker my father had put on 3 years ago. I ran toward the glass waving both arms. My whole body flooded with relief so sudden it was almost physical. The car slowed. My father was driving. My mother was in the passenger seat. Both of them were looking directly at me. My father smiled first. Not the relieved smile of a parent who has found a lost child. The smile of someone watching a punchline land exactly the way he hoped it would. My mother rolled down her window and leaned out just far enough to be heard over the traffic. I bet $50 you cannot even find your way home. Then she laughed. My father laughed with her. He lifted one hand off the wheel in a slow thumbs up. Then the car moved into traffic and disappeared. I stood frozen until a stranger brushed past me and muttered, "Excuse me." The sound of a stranger's voice snapped me back into my body. I ran inside because I did not know what else to do. I wandered from one end of the station to the other for almost 3 hours. Crying, then stopping, then walking in circles until my legs hurt. I stayed away from the doors because I was afraid of the city. I stayed away from police because my parents had spent years telling me that authority figures made everything worse. I stayed away from strangers because the same people who had abandoned me had trained me never to ask for help. That was one of the cruelest parts. They had spent years teaching me not to trust anyone. Then they left me in a place where trust was the only thing that could have saved me quickly. The person who finally noticed me was a station employee named Margaret. She was in her 50s with the calm voice of someone who had seen a great deal and learned not to panic about most of it. She had apparently watched me pass the same row of seats multiple times. She stopped me near a service hallway and asked if I was lost. I lied. I said I was waiting for my parents. She asked how long. I said I did not know. She asked if I had eaten. That question broke something open. All the shame I had been swallowing since noon came apart at once. I told her they had left me. I told her they had driven past the window and laughed. I told her my mother had bet $50 on whether I could find my way home. Margaret did not tell me to calm down. She did not suggest I was overreacting. She crouched slightly so her face was level with mine and said very clearly, "You are safe right now and I am going to help you." Security was called. Then transit police. An officer took my statement while another reviewed the station cameras covering the front entrance. They confirmed I had been standing alone for a very long time. They confirmed a car matching my description had slowed near the curb and driven away. That confirmation mattered later. When they finally reached my parents by phone, I could hear only half the conversation. But I will never forget the expression on the officer's face when he listened to whatever my mother said on the other end. It went from professional to open disbelief in about 10 seconds. He said, "No, ma'am. Leaving a 12-year-old in a major transit station is not a lesson in independence. It is child abandonment." My whole body went cold when I heard those words. Not because they sounded too harsh. Because they fit exactly. By early evening I was sitting in a small room with a social worker while a formal report was being prepared. She explained that because my parents were still insisting this had been a parenting decision and were refusing to return immediately, I could not simply be sent home. There would be an emergency placement while family court reviewed the case. I was terrified when they said foster family. Then I met Paul and Helen Mercer. He was a retired teacher with reading glasses that were always slightly crooked. She was a nurse who moved through her own house like every corner of it was somewhere she had chosen carefully. Their kitchen smelled like something baking. A dog slept in a basket near the radiator. A lamp was on in the hallway even though it was not dark yet. Helen asked if I wanted soup or toast. Paul asked if I preferred the hall light on or off when I went to sleep. Nobody raised their voice when I said I did not know. That first night I barely slept. Every car outside made me flinch. But one thought kept circling in my mind no matter how many times I tried to quiet it. A stranger in a train station had shown me more care in 5 minutes than my own parents had shown me in years. And once you understand that other people are capable of protecting you, it becomes impossible to keep calling cruelty normal. The court proceedings moved slowly. My parents arrived with a lawyer and the same attitude they had always carried at home. Calm. Slightly offended. Mildly amused that anyone was taking this as seriously as they were. They did not deny leaving me at Union Station. They admitted it. They simply insisted it had been controlled, educational, and necessary. My mother used the word resilience. The court-appointed therapist's report described a pattern of emotional abuse, humiliation, deliberate endangerment, and a systematic use of fear as a parenting tool. Those were not my words. But hearing them said out loud in a room full of adults who believed them felt like oxygen entering a space that had been sealed for years. When the judge asked if I wanted to return home while the court monitored the family, I said no. Quickly. Before the question had fully finished. My mother stared at me like I had said something unforgivable. My father looked at his hands. Then the moment that changed everything. My parents were given a choice. Commit to a 2-year reunification program with full court oversight and mandatory therapy. Or voluntarily surrender their parental rights. They chose surrender. Not because the court forced them. Because they would not submit to being evaluated. Because they could not stand the idea of oversight. Because they cared more about the damage to their reputation than about the daughter sitting across the room waiting to find out if she still had a family. They handed me over to protect their pride. I sat in that courtroom and let that truth settle into me. I had spent my entire life trying to be good enough, quiet enough, invisible enough to keep them from turning on me. And in the end they gave me up rather than admit they had done anything wrong. That was the answer I had been looking for without knowing I was looking for it. The Mercers adopted me 18 months later. When asked if I wanted to change my name, I did not hesitate. The girl who had stood by a pillar in Union Station with $9 in her pocket and no idea if she was going to be okay, belonged to a different story. The person I was becoming belonged to this one. I kept the name. I kept the Mercers. I kept moving forward. 11 years passed. I built a life as a social worker in Denver. I had chosen the work deliberately, the kind that put me in rooms with children who were afraid and needed someone to crouch to their level and say, "You are safe right now and I am going to help you." The same words Margaret had said to me. I married a man named David who had the specific patience of someone who understands that some people take longer to trust warmth. I had a dog named Biscuit who slept at the foot of our bed and had never been asked to earn his place in the house. I blocked every number my biological parents ever used. Changed my phone number once after a holiday voicemail left me shaking for an hour. Did not visit Glendale. Did not use my old name. Then one Thursday morning my phone showed a voicemail from an Illinois area code I did not recognize. I stood in my kitchen with my coffee going cold and listened. My mother's voice. Older than I remembered. Thinner somehow, like the years had pressed some of the certainty out of it. She said she had been thinking about things. She said my father had not been well. She said she hoped I was okay. She said she would like to talk if I was ever ready. She did not say sorry. She said she had been thinking about things. I stood at the counter for 9 minutes. Then I called Helen Mercer, my real mother, the one who had turned on the hall light and asked about my soup preference and never once made me feel like a miscalculation. There is a voicemail, I said. I know, she said. She had known me long enough to know what that meant. What do I do? I said. Whatever you need to do, she said. Not for them. For you. I flew to Illinois 6 weeks later. My father was in a rehabilitation center outside Glendale. A stroke the previous spring had taken some of his mobility. My mother was staying nearby in a rented apartment smaller than any room they had lived in when I was a child. The business was gone. I had learned this through a cousin who had maintained distant contact over the years. A community post had resurfaced the train station story, somebody had connected it to our family name, somebody else had confirmed it, and the town that had once protected them with polite silence had turned on them with the same efficiency. Customers stopped coming. Former employees started talking. The image they had spent decades building collapsed in the particular public way that happens when a small town finally decides to stop pretending. I walked into the rehabilitation center on a Tuesday morning. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Illness had stripped him down to the ordinary man beneath the performance. My mother was sitting beside him with the careful posture of someone still trying to look like the person she used to be. Nobody spoke first. Then my mother said my old name. I corrected her once. Jenna. She nodded. My father said they had made mistakes. Mistakes. I looked at him for a long moment. A mistake, I said, is missing an exit. What you did was deliberate. You left a 12-year-old girl in a train station in a city she had never navigated alone. You drove past the window and laughed. You placed a bet. My mother started crying. The performed kind. I recognized it. We thought you were strong enough. I was 12, I said. I had $9. No phone. No address written down. I had no idea if I was going to be okay. The room was very quiet. I am not here to punish you, I said. I am here because I wanted to say this in person instead of into a voicemail or a letter. What you did was wrong. It was documented, witnessed, and ruled on by a family court judge 21 years ago. You surrendered your rights to protect your pride. I have spent 21 years building a life without you. That life is good. It is full. It does not need anything from you to be complete.